Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here with you today. Really a privilege. Thank you for spending the next 20 minutes with me. A moment about my own background. Spent my first decade of my career at Capital One when we went through hypergrowth, followed by being co-founder of a venture capital firm, one many of you may have heard of, QED Investors. More recently, in what I like to call my third act, I'm the chairman and co-founder of an Insurtech conference called Insurtech Connect in Las Vegas, which is actually coming up in less than 2 weeks. And as a side note, for the FINNOSUMMIT community, we're going to offer a discount. Folks can just find me, or we'll try to get some information out about that. Really, my goal is to do two things. One is to provide a little bit of a lens for how to see what might be happening in the future, particularly as it pertains to insurance and innovation. And then secondly, I want to provoke a little bit, provide a few ideas, right? That I don't want to scare you or inspire you, but I do want to provoke you. Now, it's probably not news that there is a Cambrian explosion happening in Insurtech. And by this, what I mean, 500 million years ago, if you look in the fossil record, it went from just a few types of animals and creatures swimming in the sea to suddenly an enormous variety of different forms and body types and figures, many of which, by the way, died out, but a handful of which led to insects and mammals and birds and reptiles that we see today. And I think that is likely what we're going to see in insurance as well. We're seeing a Cambrian explosion, all sorts of different ideas and experiments happening in the insurance and the Insurtech world, many of which I believe actually are likely to die out, but some of which are going to become the foundation for insurance of the future. This kind of Cambrian explosion is technology-driven. And technology-driven change has a few particular features to it. Technology usually takes friction out of the system. Think about going from a piece of paper for a policy to a PDF. That's lowering the friction. Technology also tends to increase transparency. Think about watching how that PDF moves within an organization. Right? Think about tracking and measuring. It's so much easier when the world is digital than when it's analog. And when you put these two things together, a reduction of friction and an increase in transparency, you usually get a kind of deflation. The cost of offering an insurance product will go down. On the other hand, the customers will also demand lower prices too if it's a competitive market. This is really part of what I think was a 100-year megatrend, right? It started with the transistor. We are in the information age. And for any fans of the Terminator series of movies, right, this transition, this period of innovation, right, is really going to be 100 years until computers gain awareness and decide that humanity needs to go away. But we'll deal with that when we have to. And fundamentally, what's driving this innovation is Moore's Law. So for those not familiar, Gordon Moore, the co-founder of Intel, observed 30, 40 years ago that essentially the computing power available for a given price was doubling every 2 years. He was able to predict that your smartphone would have more computing power eventually than the computers that send man to the moon. That's very powerful. It actually gave him a portal to look into the future to see what was going to happen. And having a portal that looks into the future with some actuarial kind of reliability is rare, and it's very valuable. And there's other areas relevant for insurance that follow similar kinds of curves. Some of them are exponential curves like Moore's Law. The cost of satellite imagery is falling. The cost of cloud computing is falling. The cost of the sensors used for the Internet of Things is falling. The cost of broadband is falling. One of my favorite subjects where we're seeing the cost curves come into play is sequencing the genome. 20 years ago, it cost hundreds of millions of dollars to sequence a single human genome. That cost has actually been falling faster than Moore's Law. Now it costs hundreds of dollars to sequence a human genome. With near actuarial certainty, you can project that that's going to go down to less than the cost of a cup of coffee. Will it be in 4 years or 5 years or 6 years where that happens? I don't know. In a sense, I don't care. Because what I know is it will approach that. Right? And whether it's 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 years, right, I know the rough time scale, and it's in my professional lifetime where this is going to happen. Why am I talking about sequencing the genome? Because it opens up business models. It opens up the possibility of giving away the genome to a consumer for free. In fact, much to my surprise, I actually found a company that is offering human genome testing for free. It's a quid pro quo. There's an exchange there. They say, but you have to tell us about yourself. You have to let us talk to you. To let us, I suspect, make offers to you. They're probably going to lose money doing that for a while because it's going to cost them a couple $100s to offer the gene. But they're learning how to talk to the consumer, how to monetize the data and the relationship they form with that consumer. And they know, like clockwork, that their cost of goods of providing that gene is going to fall year after year after year until it becomes $1 for them. And this opens up for them, and really for the insurance industry, it's the creation of new channels, think about life and health insurance, as well as information asymmetry. Once the cost of a person's genome is $1, and it's widely available for that or maybe for free, the insurance industry needs to get nervous that customers may start to have an information advantage on the underwriting side over the insurance companies themselves. Sequencing the genome is one example where the cost is going down, and that has implications for insurance. There's another category that I would put under the heading of software is eating the world. This is a saying by a very famous venture capitalist, meaning that more and more of activity in the business world and outside the business world, for that matter, can be done by software instead of by people. And one example, very straightforward example, is the notion of software to make brokers more efficient. There's a number of Insurtech startups I've run across. They're not saying, oh, brokers are going away, consumers are going to buy insurance directly from the carriers. No, they're saying, we think brokers are here to stay, but they need to use technology to become better for serving the customers. They need to use technology to become more efficient, and let's build that technology for them. And I think they're going to succeed. I think that they're going to actually help the brokers become a lot more profitable. I don't know, maybe over 5 or 10 years, their software tools will let the brokers serve, twice as many clients. Right? That's great. If I'm a broker, I'm looking at that. I can be twice as profitable. On the flip side, I think it also means that we don't need as many brokers. Because if every broker becomes twice as efficient by using the software, I think we only need half as many. Now, are there any lawyers in the room? This next slide is best if there's lawyers. Good, okay, great. Thank you. So software is not just enhancing the brokers, but I think software is going to eat the lawyers. My example here is, back in the US, I can pay $400 in order to hire a lawyer to write a will for when I die. Now, I can also buy software on Amazon that I can use to help make that will for myself. But more recently, there's a startup that is actually offering, that has created an app that will let me create my will for free. For free. That's actually a really big deal. That's much better than $60 or $400. Why are they doing this? What's the business model? If I can provide this product, creating a will, for free, and I can do so because it's just software, once I've written it, it can run over and over and over for almost no cost. Now I'm creating a new distribution channel, a new relationship with the people who've used my app to create their will. And I can offer them, for instance, life insurance. Now, another trend we of course have to talk about is artificial intelligence. Now, we don't mean Arnold over there from the Terminator, you plop him in anywhere and fantastic, he solves whatever problem he needs to solve to get his goal done. We're decades away from that. It's not in my professional lifetime that I need to worry about that. Artificial intelligence, machine intelligence, much more like the main character from Rain Man. An autistic man, actually not very able to navigate his way through the regular world, but you could drop a pile of sticks in front of him and he could, with a glance, see how many sticks were there. That's what artificial intelligence has become. And it's actually the result of breakthroughs over the last decade. There's a contest that's run every year, essentially challenging both people and computers to classify images and what's in those. And what's striking, what's really stunning, a decade ago, the computers were terrible. They got it wrong so much more often than people. But now, they're actually getting it right more often than people. Fewer errors, and of course, those machines can run 24/7. They can be a lot less expensive. How is this showing up? Well, I've talked to a startup actually in Argentina, whose business model is focused on having the consumer take a picture of the piece of paper of their current policy, upload it. They'll apply their machine intelligence to extract the structured data, to extract the terms of that policy, so they can go back to the customer and say, now here's some very specific counter offers of a better policy we can provide, and they can compare it term by term to what they have today. That's a powerful use of it. I talked before about all the satellite data getting cheaper. There's just so much satellite data being created. Machine intelligence is probably the key to unlocking the insights out of that, and you're seeing that from some startups now. I want to talk about APIs, automated programming interfaces. Now, by show of hands, how many people are familiar with APIs? Okay, so for those who are not, think of APIs as the kind of glue that connects different systems or software or data sets or capabilities that a company might have or might need. There are a lot of different implications of APIs. APIs are actually, in my view, the foundation of why Amazon has been so successful. But I think APIs have an interesting implication for distribution. Insurance is traditionally a B to B to C kind of business, right? From the business, the insurance carrier, to a broker, to the customer. APIs are fantastic at removing friction and increasing transparency. They are great at actually letting companies work together and integrate without having to invest in that integration. I think APIs are opening up the possibility of insurance products being distributed through channel partners who have their own customers and their own product experience to the customer, rather than just being through the broker. And this is, I think, particularly powerful for the startups who have some new innovative product. They're trying to figure out how to go to market. They may not have the brand or the reputation to be able to go to large networks of brokers or traditional channel partners, but can open up by making their product available by API and letting other companies adopt it and offer it. What does that look like? Well, there's actually been some channel partnerships around insurance that have been very, very successful. I think about when I buy a TV on Amazon. In the process, they then offer a product warranty from another company. If you go to the University of Virginia for college, the university offers you, as part of the paying experience for the tuition, they offer you insurance in case your student has to leave the school during the year. That's really interesting because it's a university as a channel partner now for an insurance product. When I buy a ticket on Expedia, travel insurance is part of that experience. You don't buy travel insurance or tuition insurance through a broker, you buy it through the channel partner. And this being a FinTech conference as well as an Insurtech conference, I thought it only appropriate to talk about an example of a leading fintech that is working with some leading Insurtechs in the US through APIs to be a channel partner. So there's a company called SoFi, one of the more successful fintechs in the US, and they are now offering homeowners insurance provided by Lemonade and life insurance provided by a company called Ladder. And it's not some sort of big, intensive IT project to integrate them. Right? Lemonade has their product available by APIs. Ladder has their product available by APIs. SoFi can just access those APIs and easily offer those kinds of products. So I want to offer one final thought as we start to wrap up here. And it's really a question of what makes a company a tech company. What makes a company an insurance company or an Insurtech company? Why is Google considered a tech company rather than an ad company or a media company? Why are Amazon and Rappi considered tech companies rather than retailers? Well, for me, I think it comes down to a question of how they solve problems. What is their default approach? It's not about, has the company been around for 5 months or 5 years or 50 years? It's not about whether it's got 5 employees or 50 or 50,000. It's how they solve problems. If the default answer for solving, let's say, a compliance problem or a marketing problem or a finance problem is to hire a compliance professional or a marketing executive or a controller, then it's not a tech company. If the default answer when you have a compliance issue is to hire an engineer and have them write software to solve it, if the default answer when you have a marketing issue is to hire an engineer and try to solve it through software, when you have an ops problem, the default answer is to hire an engineer and write software, not go hire an operations vice president, then it's a tech company. And hiring an engineer and trying to solve these problems through software does not always work. But then, if it turns out that it doesn't work, you can go back and hire that functional expert, right, and solve it that way. That's fine. But sometimes, and perhaps surprisingly sometimes, the software does work. Sometimes you can hire an app instead of a lawyer to write the will. When it works, it's beautiful because it's repeatable, it's scalable. You don't have to scale from hiring one marketing professional to 10 to 50. You replicate the software. And that lends itself to hypergrowth, and that lends itself to high margin growth. So my final provocation, whether you think of yourself as an insurance company, whether you think of yourself as, oh, I'm an Insurtech company, when you leave here today, think about how you're solving problems as they arise. And problems are always arising. Is your first instinct, is the organization's first instinct, let us go hire that functional expert to solve that problem? Or is the organization's first instinct, could we conceive of hiring an engineer to write the software to solve this problem? And by that means, become an Insurtech. So thank you for having me here. It's really been a privilege. I enjoy this, and I'll be around milling about all day. Thank you.